Welcome into the Game Plan Podcast. Just right off the top, if only y'all could be in the green room when these shows are getting going. We should make a show in the green room. That would be great stuff. But as you can see, no Greg Barnes. Greg Barnes is not on the golf course. Greg Barnes is elsewhere, but there's also a Greg Barnes YouTube out there that's linked on the message boards that folks need to check out. Just a great discussion with him about NIL, rev share, all that kind of stuff going on these days in college athletics. But no, Greg, that's Jason Staples. Trey Edge is joining us. This is the Game Plan, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt. And we've got Trey with us. If you were in the Bowls lot on Saturday ahead of the Richmond game, Trey was down there. And I think we had a wonderful show. So I said, Trey, will you come join us on the Game Plan? Because Jason and I can talk for an hour, but it's much more fun when I can just tee it up and you guys can run with it.
I
So I'm
appreciate
gonna
you
bring,
having me again.
yeah, man, it's always fun to talk ball, and I'm gonna just ask straight out the gate. They're 3 games in. North Carolina's 3 games in. They're 2-1. Everybody expected them to be 2-1. Just from your perspective, is it what you expected this at this point in the season?
You want
So
to
is
take it
this to
first,
me or
Jason?
to Trey? I missed that.
No, it's to
Go
Trey.
ahead,
It's
Jason.
to Trey. I
Okay,
know what
all right.
Jason
Go
I,
ahead,
said.
Trey. I want you to take that one first.
okay, thank you for that. That's not a hard one at all, is it? Um, yeah, it's a difficult question. If you had told me 2-1, I may have taken it. If you told me how 2-1, I might not have. Um, my short answer is no, because there's so many unanswered questions that I hoped by the end of week three, heading into your game against Central Florida, that would have been already been answered. And as we enter the game against Central Florida, there are still so many unanswered questions that if you ask me, is it where I thought we'd be? I will say no. I'm hopeful. I've seen things the last couple of weeks that leave me with a positive feeling. You know what we talked about Saturday in the Bowls, a lot of those things came true, came to fruition. How we ran the football for one. You know, Jason and I talked about on the show. I wanted to see 5 yards per carry. He said it needed to be over six. Well, it was 6.2. So I can find a whole lot of silver linings. I can pump a whole lot of sunshine. That doesn't mean I'm where I thought we would be 3 weeks in.
And of course, folks that don't know, Trey bled on that field that Carolina and Richmond played, and so a little bit of a unique perspective there. Jason Staples, of course, bled on other fields. Jason, we've talked about this team ad nauseum over the last few weeks, and we said 3 or 4 weeks we're going to be the tell where this team is, and now we're at a point where, just like Trey said, we don't know yet. We're going to find out on Saturday, I think. Just to get us rolling here, as expected in what areas, not as expected in what areas for you as we get into it.
Yeah, I think the majority of what we've seen has been very expected. I think wide receiver position has largely been as expected. Although I expected Isaiah Johnson to have more of a role at this point, and of course he's now no longer with the team. Um, but decent there. I think defensively, I think the surprise is that the defensive line on the interior has been better than we expected them to be. And work that group has really shown, and we're really starting to see the benefits of that. Though again, we're dealing with lower competition so far, but even against lower competition, I didn't expect to see the defensive interior look like it has. Uh, we're going to find out more about that group this week. I think the linebackers have been at least as good, if not maybe a little better than I expected, and the secondary has been sort of in the range of what I expected. But I think Marcus Allen has struggled more than I expected him to this year, and he's a question mark going into the rest of the year at that number 2 corner spot. The real places where I think I expected them to be a little bit better were on the offensive line, although without Blasky, I mean, we talked about this once Blasky got hurt. That's gonna leave a mark. They're gonna be a lot worse on the offensive line as a result. And I think we've seen some things on the offensive line where maybe they haven't been quite as good as I thought they might be at this stage. But without Blasky, I think you have to kind of grade on a curve a little bit, and we'll see where they are moving forward after that. And I think the running backs have been a little disappointing on the whole, though. Juju June was pretty good in this last game. So, I think basically the overall level of play has been more or less what I expected, but a few of the areas are a little ahead of what I expected, and then several of the areas have been a little behind what I expected. And then you've got the quarterback position, which is a big mystery right now in terms of where Gio is going to be. There's got to be a lot of progress between, last Saturday and this Saturday for them to be where they need to be at that position. I'm not really that surprised. I mean, all of the weaknesses that he's shown so far this year are, if you go back and you look at those scouting report that I put out in the summer, they were all listed as concerns, every single one of them. There's nothing that's been a surprise. But, well, maybe one surprise is he's maybe not been quite as dynamic with his legs as what, I thought he might be just a little more dynamic to this point, especially against lower competition. But other than that, I mean, he's kind of been in the delta of what was expected, but he's been in the lower end of that delta, more towards the concern side. But we're seeing that, the outcomes of somebody who came into the offense late, into the summer, has some limitations as a thrower and as a processor, and hasn't really fully hit his stride. And the question is whether he's actually going to. So I mean, that's where they are, and the rest of it we're going to find out a lot more come Saturday, because I think Saturday is the put up or shut up game, I think, at several positions, and it's very much the test in terms of how much growth has there been since week one when you got pantsed and embarrassed, in a national context. How much growth has there been since week one? We'll find out Saturday.
They're going to find out real quickly. I mean, they're getting more healthy on the offensive line, so we'll see how that translates against UCF. And Lindbergh's been a positive. Trey, I'm going to get right into the quarterback situation, because I think we've had this discussion before. Jason and I had this discussion before. I've talked to plenty of people. I think quarterback's more important than anybody in the building. I think that you've got to have a good quarterback. As you've seen, you can be the greatest coach of all time. If you don't have great quarterback play, it's not going to translate on the field. Jason, I want your thoughts after Trey, but this is a put up or shut up game for Gio Lopez, I think. I don't think you can leave Orlando, and I said this in my weekly column, I don't think you can leave Orlando still not knowing what you have at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I can't take any issue with that. And it doesn't matter. We've all watched enough football to know, and if you've played it, Jason's coached it. It doesn't matter what level of football you're looking at, quite frankly. Your quarterback doesn't have to be great every play, but he does have to process, and he does have to take advantage of opportunities when they're there. It's funny, off air Saturday morning when we were down in the Bowls lot, Jason and I were talking about where we sit during the games. And I was telling him how I sit in the end zone, not the blue zone, the other end zone, where they put the celebrities, where people can look at it, not me. But you see things open up, specifically really on a pass play. And I found myself Saturday watching receivers start to come open. Not situations where they needed to be thrown open, but were open. Jordan Shipp had a good game. He caught 2 touchdown passes, but he was open on numerous other plays. And there was I'll say frustration. There's a lot that goes into quarterback play, but when you're constantly looking and saying to the casual fan, the quarterback's holding on to the ball too long, that's a processing thing. Fair, Jason?
Yeah.
And there's a lot that goes into that. You can be unsure of a call. It can be blocking. It can be any number of things. But at some point, you have to be definitive in your decision making. And for me, that's an issue that we have. And you can call that on an RPO execution. You can call it a straight drop back pass and looking at your second, third choices down the field. But, numbers don't lie. They just don't. And we're going into game 4 of the season. Our passing efficiency would be 16th in the ACC. I mean, hello.
And that's despite the competition to date.
Correct. And any number, pick whatever you want. Pass offense, 148 yards a game. In today's world, that doesn't fly. And we're getting ready to face a team that, granted, we don't. The funny thing about this game, and I know we're going to get into Central Florida, we don't know a lot about them either with who they've played, A&T and Jacksonville State. But we do know the athletes are going to be better. The caliber of kids they're going to face up front in the secondary are going to be better. And we're sitting here with a total offense that's 125th in the country. And you can pin it on a lot of different things. You can talk offensive line, you can talk any position you want, but as you said, the buck stops with the quarterback. And a lot was expected. Jason had the privilege of writing something for us preseason and looking at it from a different point of view. The casual fan looks at it and says money spent, and who went out and got, he's got to produce. And it's just that blunt, and it's that easy to say. That's where we are. You have to produce, or a change has to be made. It's just that cut and dry, in my opinion.
Jason, when you look at this, and I think everybody wants to blame the offense coordinator. Everybody wants to blame the quarterback. Everybody wants to blame everything. The bottom line, as Trey says, you got to produce. From your eyeballs, you've highlighted the RPO that was thrown to the wrong side or read to the wrong side. You've highlighted a few other things. My question is it fixable in the season? Because Gio Lopez doesn't look like the same guy I watched on tape at South Alabama, at least not to my layman's eye. Much more dynamic, granted. Well, the level of competition is not much different than what he's played. And that's what's concerning. It just does not look like the same player. So is it fixable? Is it a snap out of it, light come on type thing that we could see on Saturday? Is that possible with the issues that you've seen?
I mean, it's possible. Do I think that we're going to see just a rapid, switch flipped? Probably not. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think some of the stuff in terms of making sure that the assignment is known, 100% and all that stuff gets cleaned up over time. But processing on fairly routine plays, processing speed is something that, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but generally speaking, in my experience, processing speed is something a guy either has or doesn't. I mean, you just don't see a lot of guys just suddenly get a whole lot faster processing from one game to the next. Now, over time, a guy who's maybe not as fast a processor as a freshman or a sophomore, by senior year, that guy might actually have become a pretty fast processor. You can improve over time, sort of incrementally, but it rarely happens overnight. And even those guys who start out as, maybe average processors or whatever and become good processors by the end, there's a difference between those guys. I mean, you got to compare this to something like, again, I like to make other sport comparisons here. You got to compare this to like a point guard in basketball. Some point guards just see the floor better and faster than other guys. It's just innate. Like I can go through the list, but think about the great point guards in North Carolina history. And which guys, like, okay, that guy, he sees it before it happens. He's already throwing the pass and locating it in the right spot before the guy's even open. And some of those guys, like, he was doing that as a freshman. Sometimes he was throwing to air because the other guy wouldn't be there. The other guy didn't actually realize that he was going to make that pass. But the processing was already, you could see it. It's there. And, I don't think Gio's one of those guys where you look at it and go, okay, he's just a special processor. Like some of these guys, like he's just warp speed. That doesn't mean he can't become a reliable and good processor within this offense and a good player and somebody that does it quickly enough. It just means I don't think you're going to see an overnight, he's going to become a Joe Burrow or somebody overnight and suddenly be throwing it all over the yard and throwing guys open and anticipating. And that the other part to that is that even if he does, the processing does get quicker. The other issue that has been an issue is accuracy. He's not been real accurate. In terms of on-frame throws, like where you're supposed to put it on some routine throws, screen passes, and standard glance route, some over routes, and so on. Guys are having to go, and it's high more often than not, but guys are having to go up or reach and do things where the ball's not always, he's missing in the strike zone a lot and then missing out of the strike zone some. So, that's going to have to improve as well in order for him to kind of take that step. Now, Trey gave a couple of numbers. Another one that I want to give that might be the worst of all of them. You said 124th in terms of total offense, I think it was, right?
125.
In terms of Power 4 offenses, there's a metric, the rate of drives without a first down, which really matters. So basically, what's your 3 and out rate? So turnovers within the first 3 plays or 3 and out. North Carolina is the third worst in the Power 4, behind Oklahoma State, who has been bad, and they got destroyed by a really good Oregon team, but they've been bad the whole way, and Stanford. That's not good company when it comes to that. They're just ahead of Iowa. They're just behind Iowa. So Iowa's offense has been more efficient in avoiding 3 and outs than North Carolina's so far. That's really bad company, especially when 2 of your opponents so far have been an FCS team in Richmond and Charlotte, who's just not, they're not knocking anybody's socks off either. And you're coming into that third worst at avoiding 3 and outs of anybody in the country. So regardless of what's going to happen, they're going to need to figure something out and figure it out quick, or they're not going to be able to score any points on Saturday either. So, and the thing is, you keep getting you keep getting 3 and outs, and eventually that hangs your defense out to dry too. It costs you field position, and your defense eventually wears out as well. You've got to get first downs, and they've got to find a way to do that.
And to tag on to Jason's number of points, if you break that down, what he just said, the 3 and outs, if you look at third down efficiency, we're 12 of 36, 33%. Third down conversions, 12 of 36 on the season. Again, numbers speak. It's not a numbers game necessarily, but when you look at things like that, it's just an illustration of exactly what we're talking about.
I muted myself. Okay.
Tommy. That counts as
thought
like
I was
3
losing
right
it.
No, I mean, I was not muted. Y'all just couldn't hear me. Everybody in the chat's agreeing with it, though. I don't know. This thing's got a mute button here and a mute button there. Let's talk about the coaching staff.
33%, by the way, on third down is 109th in the country, including everybody. And if we're just talking Power 5, that's a whole different thing. I'm gonna have to figure that one out. But that's 109th in the country. That ain't a good place to be either.
No.
So at what point does this lie in the coaching staff's feet? Whether it's the offensive coordinator, whether it's the head man, whether it's the personnel department, whoever that we're here talking about this. And the biggest disturbing thing that is for me watching and for everybody watching is it's been done against Richmond and Charlotte. It's not like they opened with, John Bunning schedules, Oklahoma, Texas, and things like that. So Trey, at what point does it lie at the feet of, like I used to like to say, the adults in the room?
Now, I mean, we can sit here and talk about, we can sit here and talk about Gio all day long, but the adults in the room are making the decisions. Number one, who's under center or in the shotgun taking the snap, or what we're running. Ultimately, it is about the adults in the room. And they look, at any level of football, again, you tailor your attack to what you have. What do we have? That's still a question mark, to be fair, but we kind of know what we don't have. So if we know what we don't have, we're going to have to figure out a different way to do this. Yes, we saw an improved running game last Saturday. Juju certainly went off, made a name for himself in a day. But, you know, I think part of what I've struggled with, and again, I defer to Jason and some of what he saw with Gio in the scouting reports preseason, is the lack of the quarterback as a running threat has really damaged our ability to do what we want to do. And if that's a miss on recruiting or portal getting or whatever you want to call it, so be it. But that goes to the adults in the room. Your question, it's a long-winded answer. Your question was, when does it fall at their feet? Yeah, it's already at their feet. They just don't have to trip over it from here on out.
Jason, you had a lot of hold on. Yeah, I'm live. You had a lot of you had a lot
of paranoid for a while.
For I'm not touching anything. For folks watching or listening, Jason was quite animated during some of those things. One, they make the decision who plays. Two, they put players, their job is to put players in position to have success. Your video breakdown certainly clarified to me that there's been plays to be made, but I don't think I don't think it's been done to the full extent that it needs to be done if they're going to continue to play Lopez and not give Max Johnson a shot. Somebody in the chat, and I think it was Bart, said people used to rag on Longo. Longo never had these issues. Let's be honest. Longo had a couple good quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It's a little different.
But
somebody just pointed out my shirt.
Some of that's up to Longo in terms of making sure he gets those guys too. You've got to give him credit on that. Now he did, in all fairness, Longo wanted to start Jacoby Criswell over Drake May. That was a fight in the coaching staff, and Longo wanted Criswell. So I'm gonna give him a little bit of but
you glitched out.
Yeah,
you glitched out, but he probably gets some. That is a unknown fact.
Yeah, you got to take some credit away from him on that one. But yeah, on the whole, you have to admit, Longo was able to do that. But players matter too, and Longo had Javonte Williams and Josh Downs, and they're on this team. There's no Josh Downs, there's no Javonte Williams. There's no Michael Carter. There's no Sam Howell. There's no Drake May. There's no De'Ami Brown, although they're probably closest to having a De'Ami Brown of all those guys I just mentioned. They don't have a lot of these guys that they've had. And, that's the thing. When I point out in film session stuff, film review stuff, the play is there to be made, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was the right call or a good call, because here's the thing. There may be a play there to be made, but it's not a play that guy actually can make or has made with any consistency such that you can expect him to make that play. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of where they are right now, is that they have to figure out what guys can do what, and build on what those guys can do. That's what they're going to have to do. So, I think the question again, this is what Trey pointed out. They have to assess whether what they're wanting to do is compatible with the quarterback that they're playing. Then they have to assess, if not, whether it's a matter of changing what they're trying to do to be more compatible with that quarterback, which would be if you believe behind him is that real viable, and given whatever concerns you might have there, or you maybe have to make a change. I don't think that they want to make that change. I think that they still believe that the ceiling is higher with Gio Lopez, and I think there's some defensible reasons for that. But they are going to have to figure out how to get all of these pieces to fit together a good bit better, or we're going to see a lot more 3 and outs. We're going to see continued struggles on the offensive side. And, it's going to be harder this week than it has been the last 2 games. So yeah, I mean, that's that. It's not that complicated when it comes down to it. And yeah, it's on the coaches to figure that out. It's on the offensive staff to figure that out. I do also wonder, how much the tight end situation, something that they have to iron out and figure out, are they better off going to more spread stuff? Given what you're getting, right? So, and this is the hard thing. I mean, let's say that as a coach, you believe in going bigger personnel and trying to bludgeon teams, but it turns out that your best 11 is 4 wide receivers and 1 back on the field. Sometimes you gotta change that, and maybe your quarterback is better if it's a little bit more spread and you get an extra guy out of the box and he sees better. So, I mean, those are the things that you have to kind of figure out where you sit, because you can still pound the rock out of 10 personnel. You can still do it. You just have to do it differently, and you have to use your quarterback as a consistent run threat and all of that. So, yeah, they're gonna have to figure this out.
Starts on Saturday against Central Florida down in the Bounce House. Talking to Jason Staples, Trey Edge, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt. Go check them out on Franklin Street or online, johnnytshirt.com. Best place to get your Carolina swag, the best place to get your hookup. If you're an Inside Carolina Premium subscription holder, go to InsideCarolina.com. If you're new to the On3 network, or if you haven't realized we've moved, you go to InsideCarolina.com. You sign up for the On3 version of InsideCarolina.com. You get the Johnny T-Shirt code, just like always. You go tell them at Johnny T-Shirt in person that you're an Inside Carolina person. They hook you up. They bring it to you. They bring you that 10% order. They'll send it to you at johnnytshirt.com, and they're great customer service. Let's talk a little bit about the game at hand on Saturday. Trey, I think this game, and I've said it, is a big game, not only for Lopez, not only for the quarterback situation, but for the program and the fan base. And the reason I say that is because the fan base was as jacked as they can get going into TCU. It was nuts in Chapel Hill. It shows you what is possible in Chapel Hill and what can be with elite football or high-level football. And then TCU game happened, and Carolina fans are, quite frankly, and you can't blame Carolina fans. It's like Charlie Brown with the ball get yanked out. I mean, that's the meme, that's the gift, that's all that stuff. You beat Richmond, you beat Charlotte. I think this UCF game is what they have to get the mojo back in Chapel Hill, fan base wise. So how do they do it? Let's dig into how do they attack Central Florida and get some of that mojo back in a fan base that's desperate for winning football in Chapel Hill.
Is it just a horrible play on words to say it's our first really big game since TCU, and could it be bounce back at the Bounce House? Could we coin that somewhere?
That's the headline if they win this game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to get a feel for Central Florida. Jason can look at film in a different way and look at some things, and those of us who are, more on the outside looking in and seeing what they've done, looking at numbers and stats and all this kind of stuff, question marks there. They have quarterback question marks. Their starter, first game of the season, went out on a targeting hit. Second string guy comes in. He's played the rest of the way, started against A&T. They had a bye week. So who's going to start at quarterback for them? Don't know. They've got some question marks on their offensive line. But if you look at what they're trying to do and what we know they've done well, even against two teams that are not so great competition, it's run the football. 232 yards a game. I think it was 20th in the country in rushing offense. Again, I know we have to take competition into account, but I'm more speaking to what it is they want to do. They're going to be much more athletic on the defensive line. They're going to come off the edges harder, faster than we've seen in the last few weeks. And our offensive line, Tommy, you alluded to the fact we may be getting healthier. I hope so. It's going to have to hold up. If you went back and watched what Jason did on the Inside Carolina site, and the breakdowns at the guard positions on two specific plays that were just whiffs and missed assignments. Well, you do that this Saturday, you're going to get somebody killed. You're going to get somebody driven, I won't say the word, into the dirt in a big hurry. The guys that missed those tackles, and Goss was able to elude a tackle inside the 10-yard line as soon as he touched the ball, maybe the 8, he's probably not going to elude that tackle and get back to the line of scrimmage.
Those might have been the best runs of the night, by the way, from anybody.
Absolutely. So what is it we need to do? It's an old saying. Everybody says it. Okay, you've got to win the line of scrimmage. But in our case, we can't do anything else if we don't at least hold our own. On the defensive side of the ball, I don't see Central Florida coming out here and being one of these offenses. I don't think they're going to be TCU. Their quarterback's not going to be as good as TCU's quarterback was, certainly. Are they going to be as explosive as TCU? I don't believe so. They want to run the football. Our defensive line, as Jason has alluded to, has been a pleasant surprise, if that's the right word. Can they hold up against this team and a better offensive line and better quality of athlete? We have to. It all starts right there. The linebackers are going to play well. We saw what they did last week. Dixon at corner is going to play well. Allen, a little bit of a question mark, but I'm more concerned about what we do to stop their running game. That has to be our priority. Force them into long third down situations. And on offense, Tommy, quite frankly, we looked at the weaknesses in terms of numbers that we've had, that third down conversion rate specifically. If you look at what UCF has done through 2 games, their third down defense, 18th in the country. They're holding teams to 25% success rate. Okay. You can look at post-game stuff and look at some numbers and tell exactly what happened. You just can. You've got to win the battles that we haven't been winning. We've got to keep our offense on the field. Time of possession, we're bad where that's concerned as well because we can't convert third downs. We're going to have to be able to run the football. Juju averaged 8.7 yards a carry. Don't think he's going to get that. But if he gets the 5 or the 6 that Jason and I called for last Saturday, we might be okay. I called for Gio to throw 2 touchdowns. He did. Wasn't quite the way I envisioned it, but he did. Turnover free, penalties we've been good at, we've improved, but it's up front, man. For me, that offensive line, the story of the game is right there.
Jason, dig into it. Let's go defense, North Carolina defense versus that UCF offense. It is, I mean, they put up 68. Was it 68 against A&T? I don't care who you're playing. That's a lot of points.
And 11 yards per carry on the ground.
Yes.
A little over 11 yards per carry and 7 touchdowns on the ground.
I mean, that's getting that work regardless of opponent. So
and that's a team that's about maybe a little bit worse than Richmond, but that would be like Carolina scoring maybe 56 against Richmond. So it kind of tells you where they were. Now they only scored 17 against Jacksonville State. So now Jacksonville State, higher level team, better team, but they weren't as impressive there, and they only ran for a little under 3 yards per carry against them. That was a game where they had to throw the football. But the thing that concerns me about this Scott Frost offense is, well, first of all, they're gonna spread you out, and then they're gonna try to run it on you. So if you can't stop them in the box with your defensive line, you're in trouble. Because then they're gonna be able to just pound you, and they'll be able to stay balanced and all of that. But this is a Florida team with a lot of Florida players on it. And one thing when you're playing against a team that has a lot of kids at skill positions from Florida, a lot of guys from Florida, is they're going to be able to run. And those guys can all run. They've got some speed at wide receiver, and Tavian Jackson is their quarterback. He's been at Indiana for a little bit. He was actually initially at Tennessee, then at Indiana last year, and now at UCF. He was actually one of my favorite quarterback recruits the year he came out. He's talented. He's got a good live arm, good hand talent, can layer the football. It just hasn't clicked for him in college, and he got hurt a little bit as well. But he's a guy that can move a little bit. He is, he's a bigger guy, but he is a threat to to run if the play breaks down. And the thing is, he's going to be a good enough thrower that you have to really defend the whole field with him, because he can throw it to all levels of the field. And you look at his numbers on the year, 29 of 45, so 65% completion percentage for 10.5 yards per attempt and 2 scores. He's been very efficient, and he's been able to do that to multiple levels of the field. And if you watch him on the go-ahead touchdown against Jacksonville State was really notable. You see him on a little waggle to the left, so opposite his throwing arm, he sets up and throws just a gorgeous post route over the top, right in stride for a deep score. And it's one of those like, well, I can see them trying to run exactly that kind of concept against Carolina and challenging Carolina with some of that downfield speed. This is definitely a game where Marcus Allen is, if Carolina wins this game, I think Marcus Allen is probably your defensive player of the game. Because I can promise you, with what they saw from TCU, they're going to target both Marcus Allen and Caleb Cost as often as they can with the guys that can flat run. They're going to put those guys over them, and they're going to test those guys with verticals, with slot fade, with all sorts of stuff. And Carolina's got to be able to get a safety over top some to help with some of that. If it's a situation that they might have a tendency that's what's coming. But those guys are going to have to win some one-on-ones and prevent some stuff downfield. And Jackson and those receivers, they will also back shoulder you. If they can't get you over the top, there are a couple really nice back shoulders they had to set some things up against Jacksonville State, where, it's a slot fade. The slot corner did a great job playing over the top, and they just threw it to back shoulder and got a 30-yard gain out of it anyway. And that's a mature quarterback that can do that processes and gets that out. So the concern I have is that they can actually be pretty balanced, and if they get that running game going, it's going to be very difficult to stop them with the speed that they have and the quarterback that's pulling the trigger. They've got a quarterback who's better. He's played better so far this year, and I think he's a higher ceiling prospect than Gio Lopez. So you're going to have to really be solid on the back end and solid up front to be able to slow them down. And, what do you think is likely that Carolina scores in this game? Defense is going to have a really good game for Carolina to win.
Not quite there yet. The one thing that Central Florida's had, too, they've had a bye week to get healthy and get prepared. And they've had a lot of stuff going on off the field with Coach Clark and all that, and dealing with that, and prayers to his family and to him and all that. But, they've had an opportunity to rest up and to heal up after 2 weeks and sort of review everything they've got going on.
So, hey, Tommy, I wanted to ask this real quick. Jason was talking a lot about the quarterback, Taven Jackson. You coaching quarterbacks, how does it work nowadays when you have the starter who was not Jackson? I believe his name was Fancher. If I'm not Cam Fancher, I believe was the initial starter this season against Jacksonville State, got hurt. Jackson comes in, plays well. You finish the game against Jacksonville State. He plays the entire way against A&T. Now you've had a bye week. That old saying that the starter doesn't lose his job due to injury. But in this case, I mean, it seems to me the second string quarterbacks played so well, you can't go back. I mean, is that kind of where you sit with this?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we don't know exactly whether he's going to be back or not. Right. So, I mean, it was a back injury that ultimately led to him being out the next week. Fancher is a better athlete. So you're running a little bit of a different, he's a faster player, a little more of a run threat. So he's a little bit of a different prospect than what you got in Jackson. But I think Jackson, as you said, he played so well last week and played well enough in relief against Jacksonville State that I think you have to evaluate, does our offense look better with that guy in?
Yeah.
And, they say you never lose your role because of an injury, but I've seen it happen more than once. Ask Drew Bledsoe about that. Right? Bill Belichick knows how that works.
Yep.
Drew Bledsoe got hurt. I believe that was a perforated lung or something like that back in, 03? And
Who?
he never got back on the field because Tom Brady came in, and Brady was just obviously better than Drew Bledsoe. And Drew Bledsoe is a good quarterback now.
Yeah.
They were successful with Bledsoe at quarterback initially that year, and then Brady came on and was just so much better. Right? You go from a guy who's a really good starting quarterback in the NFL to one of the best to ever play the position, and the difference was striking right away. So, yeah, you can lose your job because of injury, but as a coach, you do have to finesse that, right? You do have to assess, how am I going to handle this?
Are we talking about UCF? Or are we talking about Carolina?
Well, Carolina's quarterback is not hurt.
Fair
right
point. Yeah.
and let's hope that he stays healthy. But the decision is a little different. But if I'm looking at the two games, I like what I saw from Jackson better than I like what I saw from Fancher early in that game.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jackson gives them more of a consistent pass threat. And the thing is, they've got two guys that probably both would be starters at Carolina right now at quarterback.
Yep.
So that's the tricky part.
You talk about how many points does Carolina's offense have to score. Trey, your thoughts there and how they do it? I think we're going to see a heavy dose of Damon June, but at what point does Central Florida put 8 in the box and say, okay, do it now? And I think that's coming. And Jason, you can comment on it after Trey, but I think that is coming for this North Carolina offense if they don't figure out the passing game.
Absolutely. And it's no secret. We want to run the ball. I mean, that is what we've shown. We wanted to, everything's built off that. What do we have to score to win? Man, it's got minimum 3 touchdowns, and hope you can win a 24-20 type football game somewhere in that ballpark. If you can get to 21, 24 points, you got a shot. You're not going to win this game scoring 13, 14 points. That's just not going to happen.
Despite Greg Barnes's greatest wishes, it ain't happening.
I don't see it happening. I think you've got to get in the 20s, and that means if you win the game and you score 21, 24, even stretch into 27 points, your defense has played really well. Obviously, the offense has played better if we score that against Central Florida. But if we win that type of ball game and we hold Central Florida, let's say 3 touchdowns, we've played really well on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think at minimum you're gonna need at minimum you're gonna need 24 points in this game.
Yeah.
So what's Carolina's offense look like this week, Jason?
Well, they're playing against Alex Grinch, so and his defense. They're going to be aggressive up front. They're going to be variable in their coverages. I mean, you can kind of swap this out with a lot of coaches these days. 5 defensive backs. They do have some players on the defensive line who will remind you a little bit of a couple of the guys from TCU. That's a bit concerning because TCU actually had a bit of their way with Carolina up front at times. And, you look at a few of these guys, you're looking at one of their defensive tackles, 13. He's a good player. He's got some size, but he moves like a standard Florida product defensive tackle. And, they are mostly one gap. They're going to get upfield. They're going to try to be aggressive. They're going to let those ends loose against your tackles. And that's a concern. Because right now the left tackle position has been a little shaky in pass protection so far this year. And this is, since TCU, the best set of ends that you've played. And among the better set of ends that you're going to play on the schedule. So to me, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, you're going to have to actually figure out how to use some RPO stuff and quarterback run game to set up your core running packages in this game. This is one of those games where if I'm Belichick and I'm Kitchens, I'm looking if I'm playing Gio Lopez, I'm looking at designed runs for him 10 plus times in this game. I'm looking at getting him on the edge on some zone read. I'm looking at some inverted veer where he's the inside runner. I'm looking at some quarterback counter type stuff, because they're going to have to make that defense defend the quarterback run game and gain that extra gap that you get from that. You're going to have to do that against this defense, I think, to have the kind of success that you haven't had so far in the season overall. But it remains to be seen whether or not you're going to see Gio be on time on some of this, and whether the offense is going to start to get on track in terms of its execution to be able to pull all that off. It's less really about the game plan, although I think that part matters, and more about making sure that these guys execute on those on the little things that they've not done yet.
We're talking with Jason Staples, Trey Edge here on the game plan. It's time to roll into the prediction portion of the show. I do find it interesting, Jason, you mentioned UCF's defensive line. A young man by the name of Rodney Laura, if Carolina fans are so inclined to remember that name. He is an interior defensive lineman for UCF, and he's played well this year. Be interesting to see if they called number 94's name a lot. I know he would like to make sure that happens against Carolina. Well, let's talk about predictions. Trey, I usually get everybody to write them down because Greg and Jason always piggyback on each other, but I trust that you guys will not piggyback. Let's do it this way. Trey, give me a score. Give me offense and defense MVPs that reflect your score.
Boy, this is a tough call for me. Sometimes you just get gut feelings and you just roll with it. It doesn't have to be necessarily logic or well thought out reason for it. Sometimes it's just gut. It is time for Carolina to simply play well and us come out of a game, and I could even handle that in a loss, quite frankly. But to just say, you know what, in all phases of the games, we played well. Prediction, I just gave it away a minute ago. I am actually going to take the Heels in this, in a game where they step forward and set a bar for the rest of the season. 24-20, Heels win it on the road. Sometimes you can get well on the road a lot better than you can at home, and I'm going to go with that in sunny Florida. If I'm going to pick a guy on each side of the ball, I will go on the offensive side of the ball to something Jason said. I'll go with the tight end who caught 3 balls last week after only having 1 catch the first 2 games. We have a tight end who's caught 4 balls now, only 1 tight end. I'm going to go with Jake Johnson, to have a touchdown catch and have a big mark in this game. And on the defensive side of the ball, that's tough. But I do think, like Jason said, the priority is stopping the run. So I have to go there. And I'm going to let Jason say his name the way he loves to say his name. I'm going with Leroy Jackson. 7 tackles on the year, but someone in the middle has to establish that stop, man, that fire hydrant right in the middle of that defensive line that you just can't move. And I'm going to go with him. The presence on the defensive line by Mr. Jackson is what I'm going to roll with. Heels, 24-20.
24-20 for Trey Edge there. Jason, you're up.
So I'm going to disagree with you here. I'm going to take UCF to win this game. Carolina has not proven to me that they can do what they need to do to win this game just yet this season. And consider me an honorary Missouri resident for the week. They're going to have to show me. Right? They're going to have to show me that they are in position to execute the way that they need to on offense to score enough points. Because I do think that UCF's offense is starting to round into some shape and will challenge Carolina's defense. I do think Carolina's defense is going to be mostly up to the task, but I think ultimately it's just going to be a little too much for Carolina's offense in this one. I'm going to go with UCF 27, North Carolina 24. I think this is going to be a close game. It's likely to be a close game, but I do like UCF to win. In terms of offensive and defensive players, I'm going to go with Jordan Shipp on offense. I think, he's been the clear best player on offense all season. I think he probably scores another touchdown or two in this game. He's going to continue to be a guy for them. And then I think on defense, I'm not going to pick an MVP so much as the most important player on defense this week is Marcus Allen.
Yeah.
The number 2 corner, because Dixon's going to be able to hold his own on that side. And you could also add Caleb Cost in there, in as much as he's going to be the nickel guy. I mean, basically, whoever's playing nickel is going to be the next, because what they do offensively, they've been throwing it a bunch, by the way, to their nickel wide receiver. So to their slot guy, Dwayne Thomas. He's a 5'8" standard. He's from Miami, and Jimbo Fisher once told me, you go down to South Florida and you shake a tree, and a guy about 5'8", 5'9", runs 4.4, falls out. Dwayne Thomas is one of those guys. And they're gonna try to get him matched up and to get him to run by some guys. They've got a couple other receivers that are going to give you, they're going to try to take some matchups there. But I think if Carolina wins this game, it's because they'll have won some matchups at the slot corner and at the number 2 corner. And that's the matchup to me that I'm watching more than anything. And that tells you, by the way, that I think that, because normally, Tommy, what do I say? Interior defensive line matters the most in virtually every game. I'm at the point now where I'm actually confident enough in the interior defensive line to say they're probably going to play well enough to keep Carolina in the position where they could win this game if they get support from elsewhere. I got to see the secondary do it against, the other receivers there, and against an offense that's going to challenge them. And I think ultimately UCF they've got a few too many athletes, and Carolina has not proven to me that they can execute well enough to win it.
There you have it. The experts are split. I'm going to side with
That's a good
Trey.
sign.
I'm going to side with the guest expert. I'm going 28-24 Carolina. I think they do just enough. I think there might be another defensive score tucked away in there, because I'm not sure the offense scores as much. But I think the offense might surprise us this week one way or another. And we'll see. But I think it'll be an interesting game. I think it is a matchup of two teams that are in very similar situations. South Florida with a little less of the hype. They've got 69 new players. Carolina's got 70. They've had a coaching change. They're still figuring it out. You talk to everybody down at UCF, they don't know what they've got. You talk to people at Carolina, they don't know what they've got. It's one of those games where it's going to come down to a thunderstorm delay and a defensive play and maybe a special teams play in the bounce house. But I got Carolina 28-24. That'll do it, boys. It's been a fun show. Thank you, Trey, for taking the time to join us again.
Thanks, Tommy. Thanks, Jeff.
If folks are watching this and you did not watch the Inside Carolina Live, go back on the YouTube channel and watch Inside Carolina Live from pre-Richmond game. It's still very relevant today, and it is worth worth watching it. And also, you see the Jim Hawkins interview, but also Inside Carolina Live this Saturday, 12:30 to 2:30 with Joey Powell. I'm on it. Jason's on it. EJ Wilson's on it. A lot of good stuff there that you'll see and hear on that. Stay tuned to Inside Carolina for complete coverage. And as always, go to InsideCarolina.com, sign up, pay your $1, get your premium subscription, and join the fun on the On3 network, and hit up Johnny T-shirt while you're at it. Boys, be safe.